Infertile millionaire saved from car accident by black woman. The next day, reporters terrorize her because the restaurant shimmered under the soft glow of crystal chandeliers, the hum of polite conversation blending with the muted clink of fine china. Tyler Griffin adjusted the cuffs of his tailored suit, the silk fabric cool against his wrists. Across the table, Victoria's laughter rippled, catching the attention of nearby diners. She leaned forward, her perfectly manicured hand brushing a stray lock of blonde hair behind her ear, her diamond bracelet catching the light. "Tyler," she began, her voice light but deliberate. "I have something to tell you." He felt his heartbeat quicken. Tonight was the night he'd dreamed about for weeks. The Carter ring, resting heavily in his pocket, was a tangible promise of the life he wanted to build with her. Victoria's soft smile emboldened him, her hand now resting atop his. "I'm pregnant," she said, her words landing like the softest of confetti. For a moment, the restaurant seemed to blur. Tyler's gaze fell to the faint gleam of her wedding finger. Bare, for now, but not for long. He blinked, then smiled, the curve of his lips genuine and unrestrained. "That's..." He exhaled, his voice thick with emotion. "That's incredible, Victoria." Her laughter, softer now, bubbled up again. "I hoped you'd think so," she replied, reaching for her glass of sparkling water. Tyler leaned back slightly, his mind already leaping ahead. A nursery in the penthouse. Weekends spent pushing a stroller through Central Park. The Griffin legacy, no longer an abstract ambition, but something tangible, breathing. Family dinners, milestones, stability. "I've been thinking," Tyler said, his tone shifting to the measured cadence he used in boardrooms. "Before we officially start planning for everything, let's make sure we're both in top shape. A quick health checkup for peace of mind. You know, for the baby." Victoria arched an eyebrow, but her expression remained composed. "You're always so thorough," she teased. "But sure, if it'll make you feel better." 2 weeks later, Tyler sat in the waiting room of an exclusive private clinic. The minimalist decor, sleek furniture, muted colors, reflected the kind of understated luxury he was accustomed to. He scrolled through emails on his phone, every so often glancing at the examination room door where Victoria had disappeared minutes earlier. He adjusted his tie, a nervous habit he hadn't quite managed to shake, even after years of high-stakes negotiations. "Mr. Griffin," a nurse appeared, clipboard in hand. "The doctor will see you now." The sterile scent of antiseptic filled the room as Tyler stepped inside. Dr. Howard, a distinguished man with silver-streaked hair and a calm demeanor, gestured for him to take a seat. "Thank you for coming in today, Mr. Griffin," Dr. Howard began, his voice steady but subdued. He adjusted his glasses and looked directly at Tyler. "I've reviewed your results." Tyler's brow furrowed. "And?" Dr. Howard hesitated for a fraction of a second, enough for Tyler to notice. "The tests indicate that you're infertile. The condition is irreversible." The words hung in the air, sharp and heavy, like the blade of a guillotine poised to drop. Tyler blinked once, twice, his mind scrambling to make sense of what he'd just heard. "Excuse me?" His voice was low, measured, too calm, even to his own ears. Dr. Howard sighed, his expression tinged with the faint sympathy of someone who'd delivered similar news too many times before. "I understand this may come as a shock. We conducted extensive testing to ensure the accuracy of the diagnosis. I'm very sorry." Tyler's throat felt dry, his carefully constructed world beginning to tilt. He ran a hand over his jaw, the friction grounding him in the sterile room. "There's no chance." His voice faltered. He cleared his throat. "No treatment. No..." Possibility at all? Dr. Howard shook his head, his response as final as a locked vault. Unfortunately, no. The journey home was a hazy memory. The city lights streaked past the window of his car like muted fireworks, a dull backdrop to the storm raging in his chest. Tyler's grip on the steering wheel tightened. Victoria's announcement replayed in his mind, over and over, like a broken record. I'm pregnant. A hollow ache began to form in his gut, gnawing at the edges of his resolve. When he finally walked into the penthouse, Victoria was waiting on the couch, scrolling through her phone. "Hey! How did it go?" she asked, barely looking up. Tyler stood frozen, the weight of the truth pressing against his chest like a vice. He stepped forward, his shadow casting long across the polished floor. "You tell me," he said, his voice low but sharp. "Who's the father, Victoria?" Her head snapped up, her expression shifting from casual indifference to startled defensiveness. "What are you talking about?" "Don't," Tyler said, his jaw tightening. "Don't play coy with me. I just came from the clinic. I can't have children. So again, who's the father?" Victoria's lips parted, but no sound came out. Her hands trembled as she set her phone down. For the first time, Tyler saw something crack in her polished exterior. Her silence was more powerful than any justification. In that moment, Tyler felt the ground beneath him give way completely. The sleek office sat on the 15th floor of a modest midtown building, a stark contrast to the luxury Tyler Griffin was accustomed to. His shoes echoed against the polished floor as he crossed the room to meet the private investigator, a man with the kind of nondescript appearance that made him blend into crowds. Tyler's usual air of control was intact, but there was a tension in his jaw that betrayed him. "Mr. Griffin." The investigator's voice was even, professional, as he gestured toward a plain wooden chair. A manila folder lay on the desk between them, thick with photographs and documents. "I have the results of the inquiry." Tyler sat, his movements deliberate. "Show me." The investigator slid the folder across the desk. Tyler hesitated, his fingers hovering just above the edge before flipping it open. The first image was unmistakable. Victoria, her profile captured in the warm glow of an intimate restaurant. Opposite her sat a man Tyler recognized immediately, a high-profile actor whose face had graced magazine covers and billboards alike. Their non-verbal cues, such as her hand on his arm and his leaning toward her, conveyed a mutual gaze that required no further explanation. "This was taken 2 months ago," the investigator said, flipping to the next image. She met him frequently at hotels under aliases. The photographs told a story Tyler couldn't deny. Victoria, laughing, touching, retreating into private spaces with another man. Text message transcripts followed, brief, coded exchanges that were damning in their simplicity. "Had a fantastic time last night. Can't wait to see you again. Miss you already." Tyler's throat tightened as he closed the folder, his grip so firm the edges of the paper bent. His mind flicked back to fleeting moments he'd brushed off, the late-night work meetings, the vague explanations, the phone she always kept face down on the table. He hadn't wanted to see it then. He couldn't unsee it now. What about the child? Tyler's voice was cold, each word precise. The investigator straightened. "Paternity is unlikely to be yours, based on the timeline of her meetings with him." Tyler nodded once, curt. "Thank you." He left without another word, the folder tucked under his arm like evidence for a trial only he would attend. The hum of evening traffic filled the streets outside, yet Tyler moved through them with the weight of the truth pressing heavily on his chest. Dinner was at a private club Victoria favored, its dim lighting and velvet interiors designed to cocoon its patrons from the outside world. She was already seated when Tyler arrived, her gold bracelet glinting as she sipped a glass of red wine. Her smile faltered when she saw his expression. "Tyler," she began, setting her glass down. "You're late." He slid into the seat opposite her, placing the manila folder on the table without preamble. "Open it." Victoria's brow furrowed, but she reached for the folder. As she thumbed through the photographs, her carefully curated mask began to crack. Her hand trembled slightly as she closed the folder, her eyes darting up to meet his. "This isn't what it looks like," she said quickly, her tone defensive. Tyler leaned back, his gaze sharp, unrelenting. "Then what is it, Victoria? Since it appears to me that you have been engaging in sexual activity with another individual while simultaneously attempting to establish a future with me." She inhaled sharply. "I can explain." "Don't." His voice sliced through her excuses with precision. "Don't insult me by lying again." The surrounding diners had begun to notice the exchange, their whispers a faint buzz in the background. Victoria's composure faltered further under the weight of his scrutiny. "It wasn't serious," she said, her voice dropping. "It meant nothing." "Nothing?" Tyler's laugh was bitter, a sharp edge to it. "The man you've been sneaking off to hotels with, the father of your child, meant nothing. Do you even hear yourself?" Victoria's eyes glistened, but there was no trace of remorse, only self-preservation. "I didn't plan for this to happen, Tyler. You've been so busy, so focused on work." "That's your excuse?" His voice rose slightly, drawing more stares. He leaned forward, lowering his tone, but not the intensity. "You had everything, Victoria. Everything, and you threw it away." Her lips parted, but no words came. The silence stretched between them, broken only by the distant clink of cutlery. Tyler stood, his chair scraping against the polished floor. "We're done," he said, his voice final. He left without looking back. The city blurred past him as Tyler drove aimlessly, his knuckles white against the steering wheel. Victoria's words echoed in his mind, her justifications hollow and grating. The betrayal cut deeper than he'd expected, not just because of her infidelity, but because of what it said about the life he thought they were building. His car came to a stop at an intersection, the sleek hood. Tyler felt untethered, a man adrift in a city that no longer felt like his own. The relentless sheets of rain transformed Manhattan's streets into a blur of neon and shadow. Tyler Griffin gripped the steering wheel of his black Jaguar with knuckles so tight they blanched. The rhythmic swish of the windshield wipers did little to clear the storm. Or his thoughts. Each passing streetlight reflected in his tear-glazed eyes, magnifying the ache in his chest. The words she'd said, "It wasn't serious, it meant nothing," replayed in his mind like a mocking refrain. The photographs, the texts, the undeniable proof. Each piece had cut deeper than the last. His breaths were shallow, his pulse erratic. His stomach churned as anger and humiliation clawed their way to the surface. With the rain-slicked streets stretching out before him, Tyler pressed harder on the accelerator. The Jaguar's engine growled in protest as he weaved through traffic, ignoring honking horns and flashing headlights. The city seemed suffocating, its towering skyscrapers now cold, impersonal monoliths looming over him. He had built a life in this city, a legacy. But tonight, it felt foreign, hostile. At a red light, his foot hovered over the brake, but didn't commit. A faint rumble of thunder echoed above. The light changed to green, and Tyler surged forward without looking, his movements reckless and desperate, as though speed could somehow outrun the betrayal, gnawing at his core. The streets blurred, a kaleidoscope of chaos. A cab's horn blared as Tyler cut too close. The flash of yellow in his peripheral vision jolted him, but he didn't slow. He didn't care. The car lurched slightly, its tires skimming the edge of a flooded curb. Tyler's vision narrowed to the road ahead as his world seemed to collapse inward. An intersection loomed, the light flashing yellow. He barely noticed the SUV barreling through from the other direction. The blast of its horn shook him from his haze, but it was too late. His reflexes kicked in, wrenching the steering wheel to avoid a collision. The Jaguar fishtailed violently, the tires screeching against the slick pavement. The sound of metal scraping a lamppost screeched through the night, followed by the gut-wrenching crash of the front end crumpling like paper. Glass shattered, scattering like icy rain inside the cabin. Tyler's body lurched forward, the seatbelt snapping him back with a force that stole his breath. The car came to a shuddering halt against the lamppost, its engine sputtering before giving out. Smoke curled from beneath the hood, mingling with the acrid stench of burnt rubber and gasoline. Rain hammered against the broken windshield, each drop hissing as it met the smouldering metal. For a moment, there was only silence. Tyler's head lolled to the side, his vision swimming as pain radiated through his chest and shoulders. The world seemed far away, as though he was observing it all through a thick layer of glass. Then came the voice. "Hey, stay with me!" It was firm, yet steady, cutting through the fog that threatened to envelop him completely. Tyler blinked, his gaze drifting to the figure outside the shattered driver's window. A black woman's face came into view, her dark, rain-soaked curls clinging to her skin. Her eyes, steady and piercing, locked onto his. "You're going to be okay," she said, her voice carrying an urgency that snapped him out of his daze. Her hands worked furiously at the crumpled metal of the door. "Can you move?" Tyler tried to speak, but all that came out was a ragged cough. Blood tinged his lips, the metallic taste sharp and jarring. The woman's expression tightened, but she didn't flinch. "Don't move too much. Just breathe," she instructed, her voice unwavering despite the chaos around them. Rainwater ran down her arms as she gripped the door again, her knuckles reddened from effort. "I'm getting you out of here." The distant sound of sirens began to grow louder, a faint promise of help on the way. But the woman didn't wait. She braced one foot against the side of the car and pulled with all her strength. The door groaned, but didn't budge. Undeterred, she repositioned herself and tried again. Tyler's head swam, but he couldn't look away from her. The world around them felt surreal. The fractured light from the lamppost above, the rain cascading over shattered glass, the acrid smoke curling into the air. Yet her presence grounded him, her determination cutting through the haze. The door finally gave way with a jarring screech. She leaned in, her hands gentle but firm as she reached for him. "Come on, just lean on me. We've got to get you away from the car." Tyler winced as he shifted, pain shooting through his ribs, but he obeyed. Her arm slipped under his, steadying him as she guided him out of the wreckage. The cold rain hit his skin like needles, jolting him further awake. As she helped him to the curb, Tyler slumped against the concrete, his breath shallow but steady. The woman crouched beside him, her hand resting lightly on his shoulder. "You're safe now," she said, her voice softer but still steady. Her eyes met his, unwavering. "Help's almost here." The sirens grew louder, their wails echoing through the rain-soaked streets. Tyler's vision blurred again, but not before he caught one last glimpse of her. The woman who had pulled him from the wreckage, her silhouette framed against the fractured light of the city. The antiseptic smell was the first thing Tyler Griffin noticed as he stirred, his mind sluggish and disoriented. His eyelids felt impossibly heavy, but the steady beeping of monitors insisted on dragging him into consciousness. The light overhead was muted, casting a pale glow across the stark white room. A nurse entered, her movements brisk yet quiet. Noticing his groggy state, she offered a small smile. "Good to see you awake, Mr. Griffin. You've been through quite an ordeal." Tyler blinked, his throat dry and scratchy. His ribs ached with each shallow breath, and there was a dull throb at the back of his skull. He tried to speak, but only managed a raspy croak. "Don't strain yourself," the nurse said, pouring water into a small plastic cup and placing it on the bedside table. "You were in a car accident. You're lucky to be alive." The word accident jolted Tyler's memory. His mind scrambled to piece together fragments: the rain, the screech of tires, the crunch of metal, and then her. His voice came out hoarse, but insistent. "The woman who—" The nurse interrupted, understanding instantly. "She saved your life, pulled you out before the car could catch fire." Her tone softened. "She stayed with you until the paramedics arrived. Without her, things might have been very different." Tyler's brow furrowed. He tried to conjure her image, those determined eyes, the rain-soaked curls, but the memory felt distant, like a dream slipping from his grasp. "Where is she?" "She's still here," the nurse said. "Would you like to see her?" The meeting was arranged in a modest lounge just down the hall. Tyler was wheeled in, his injuries still too severe for much movement. The room was sparsely furnished, neutral tones, a small coffee table, and 2 chairs flanking a window streaked with raindrops. She was already there, standing near the window, her back to him. When she turned, Tyler felt a pang of recognition. Her presence was steady, grounding, just as it had been in the chaos of the crash. Karen Morrison wasn't what he'd expected. She was tall, with an air of quiet confidence that belied the exhaustion visible in her dark eyes. Her skin, a deep, rich brown, glowed faintly under the room's soft light, and her hands were bandaged, a stark reminder of what she'd endured to save him. "Mr. Griffin," she began, her voice warm but measured, "I'm glad to see you're awake." Tyler gestured for her to sit, the motion slower than he intended. "You can call me Tyler," he said, his voice rough but sincere, "and thank you for everything." Karen shook her head as she took the seat across from him. "You don't have to thank me. Anyone would have done the same." "No," Tyler said, his tone firm despite his weakened state. "They wouldn't have." He met her gaze, his gratitude unspoken but palpable. Karen didn't respond immediately. Her fingers brushed over the edge of the coffee table, her movements deliberate. "You looked like you needed someone," she said finally, her eyes steady on his. "I just happened to be there." Tyler studied her, noting the faint tremor in her hands and the way her shoulders seemed to carry an invisible weight. She wasn't dismissing his gratitude out of false modesty. She genuinely believed her actions were ordinary. But Tyler knew better. "How badly were you hurt?" he asked, glancing at the bandages. "Just a few burns and cuts," Karen replied with a small shrug, downplaying the injuries. "The doctors patched me up." "You risked a lot for someone you don't even know," Tyler said, his voice quieter now. "Why?" Karen tilted her head slightly, her expression thoughtful. "Because someone had to," she said simply. "And I could." Her words hung in the air, understated, yet profound. Tyler leaned back in his chair, his pain momentarily forgotten as he absorbed her calm strength. She wasn't like anyone he'd met before. No pretense, no posturing, just authenticity. "I don't know how to repay you," he admitted, the vulnerability in his voice surprising even himself. Karen smiled faintly, the corners of her mouth curving upward. "You don't owe me anything, Tyler. Just focus on getting better." Her words carried a quiet finality, but they weren't dismissive. Instead, they felt like an invitation to reflect, to recover, to rebuild. Tyler nodded, his gaze lingering on her as she rose to leave. At the door, Karen paused and turned back. "Take care of yourself, okay? The world doesn't need any more wreckage." Tyler almost smiled at that, the faintest flicker of something hopeful stirring within him. As she walked away, he realized that Karen had done more than pull him from the wreckage of his car. She'd given him a glimpse of the kind of resilience he hadn't known he needed. The Bronx felt alive in a way Tyler hadn't expected. The streets were bustling, vibrant with the sounds of honking cars, lively chatter, and the distant strains of music wafting from open windows. He parked his sleek, understated sedan, a deliberate choice for the visit, near a modest brick building painted with murals of bright, smiling children. The sign above the entrance read, "Bright Futures Community Center." Through the tall windows, he saw Karen Morrison. She stood among a small group of children, her tall frame slightly hunched to meet their eye level. Her hands, now free of bandages but bearing faint scars, gestured animatedly as she spoke. The children, a mix of ages and ethnicities, laughed and leaned in, their faces lighting up in response to her words. Tyler watched her for a moment, unseen. This was the same woman who had pulled him from a wrecked car just days ago, but here she seemed entirely at ease, commanding the space with quiet authority. He didn't fully understand what had drawn him here, but curiosity had its grip on him. Inside, the center was a kaleidoscope of energy. Colorful posters adorned the walls, and the faint aroma of something sweet, cookies perhaps, lingered in the air. Tyler kept his movements unobtrusive, observing from the sidelines as Karen transitioned seamlessly between groups of children, her voice gentle yet firm as she guided them. "Miss Karen," a young girl exclaimed, tugging at Karen's sleeve. "Can you help me with my drawing? I can't get the hands right." Karen crouched beside her, taking the crayon the girl offered. "Let me see," she said, her tone patient. "Hands can be tricky, but look at yours. They're perfect little models." The girl giggled as Karen carefully sketched an outline for her to follow. Tyler couldn't help but notice how her presence seemed to calm the room, like a steady rhythm in the midst of chaos. When Karen finally noticed him, her eyes widened briefly in surprise, but she quickly composed herself. "Tyler," she said, standing. Her smile was faint, but genuine. "This is unexpected. I wanted to check on you," Tyler said, his tone casual, though his presence here was anything but. "You've done enough for me. I thought maybe it was time to return the favor." Karen crossed her arms lightly, her expression skeptical, but not unkind. "I don't think I'm the one who needs help." Tyler glanced around, gesturing toward the lively room. "You manage all this on your own?" Karen shrugged, glancing toward the kids. "Not entirely. The center gets volunteers, but I oversee most of the programs." "And the funding?" Tyler pressed, his curiosity piqued. A flicker of something, pride perhaps, crossed her face. "Grants, donations, some of my own savings," she said, her voice steady. "It's not always enough, but we make do." They found a quieter corner, away from the hum of the children. Karen leaned against a table, her arms relaxed, but her eyes watchful. Tyler chose his words carefully. "What brought you here?" he asked, his voice low, genuine. "Why? The center." Karen's gaze shifted to the children, her expression softening. "It started as a summer job when I was younger, but after a while, it became more than that. These kids, their lives, their stories. It's difficult not to get invested." Tyler waited, sensing there was more. Karen hesitated before continuing, her voice quieter now. "When I found out I was pregnant, I thought I'd have to leave all this behind. My ex wasn't exactly thrilled with the news." The words hung in the air, unembellished, but heavy with meaning. "He left?" Tyler asked, his tone carefully neutral. Karen nodded. "The second I told him. Said he wasn't ready for that kind of responsibility." She exhaled, the sound more resolute than bitter. "At first, I thought I couldn't do it on my own. But then I realized, these kids, This community, they've been my strength. If I can give them even a fraction of what they've given me, it's worth it." Tyler studied her, noting the way her shoulders straightened, her resolve clear even in the face of hardship. She was not only surviving, but also thriving, crafting something significant from what others might have perceived as overwhelming challenges. As they spoke, Karen remained guarded, but not closed off, her responses measured yet sincere. When Tyler offered to donate to the center, her reaction was immediate. "I appreciate the gesture," she said, her voice kind but firm. "But this isn't about charity. What I did for you wasn't transactional." "It's not charity," Tyler countered. "It's gratitude. Let me help." Karen shook her head, smiling faintly. "If you want to help, show up. Be present. That's worth more than a check." Her words landed with surprising weight. Tyler nodded, allowing the topic to lapse. Instead, they moved to lighter topics, the conversation flowing more naturally as the minutes passed. He found himself drawn to her resilience, her clarity of purpose. Karen didn't just endure challenges, she transformed them into opportunities. By the time he left, the sun was dipping low over the Bronx, casting the streets in warm hues of gold and amber. Tyler paused at his car, glancing back at the center. Through the window, he saw Karen with the children again, her laughter audible even from this distance. Teaching is a noble and respected profession. What is the name of your favorite teacher, and do you have a story to share with us? Leave your information in the comments section below. We are curious about it. The sterile scent of the clinic was a stark contrast to the warm vibrancy of the community center. Tyler Griffin sat in the waiting room, his fingers idly tracing the edge of a brochure for prenatal care. Across from him, Karen sat with her hands resting on her lap, her gaze fixed on the glossy, nondescript painting of a meadow that hung on the wall. The silence between them wasn't awkward but reflective, a quiet acknowledgement of how their worlds had overlapped in the most unexpected ways. "This place feels different from the one I went to," Karen said softly, breaking the silence. Her voice carried a note of hesitation. Tyler glanced over, curious. "How so?" Karen shrugged, her lips curving into a faint smile. "It's calmer. My last appointment was rushed. The clinic I usually go to is overcrowded. This feels like another world." Tyler nodded, understanding the unspoken weight of her words. "I wanted you to have the best care. You deserve it." Karen didn't respond immediately. Her hands tightened briefly before she exhaled and offered a quiet, "Thank you." When the nurse called Karen's name, Tyler rose with her. She hesitated for a moment, her eyes searching his face. "You don't have to come in." "I want to," he replied, simply. Inside the examination room, the soft hum of machinery filled the air. Karen lay on the reclined bed, her fingers nervously twisting the edge of her sweater. Tyler stood nearby, his arms crossed as he observed the setup. A monitor flickered to life as the technician applied gel to Karen's abdomen. "This is going to feel a little cold," the technician said cheerfully. Karen winced slightly, but nodded. As the ultrasound began, the room filled with rhythmic, rapid beats, the sound of two tiny hearts working tirelessly. Tyler's breath hitched, the sound cutting through the barriers he'd built around himself. He glanced at Karen, who was staring at the monitor with a mixture of awe and apprehension. "There they are," the technician said, pointing to the screen. "Both babies look healthy and strong." Karen's eyes softened as a quiet smile spread across her face. Tyler couldn't tear his gaze away from her. In that moment, she wasn't the woman who had saved him or the determined leader of a community center. She was just a mother, vulnerable yet fiercely protective of the lives growing inside her. "Twins," Tyler murmured, his voice laced with something close to wonder. Karen turned to him, her expression unreadable. "It's overwhelming sometimes, knowing they'll depend on me for everything." "You're stronger than you realize," Tyler said, his tone firm. "They're lucky to have you." Karen didn't reply, but her gaze lingered on his, a flicker of gratitude passing through her eyes. Later, as they walked out of the clinic, the late afternoon sun bathed the city in a golden glow. Tyler broke the silence. "Do you ever wish things were different?" "That he'd stayed." Karen's steps slowed, and she folded her arms, as if bracing against an unseen chill. "Sometimes," she admitted. "Not because I need him, but because it might have been easier for the twins, having two parents from the start." She paused, her voice gaining a steely edge. "But then, I remind myself, I don't need someone who doesn't want to be here. They deserve better." Tyler absorbed her words, his own struggles surfacing unbidden. "I used to think a family meant legacy, carrying on a name, building something bigger than myself." He hesitated, the vulnerability unfamiliar and uncomfortable. "But now, I don't even know what that means anymore." Karen glanced at him, curiosity flickering in her expression. "Is that why this is challenging for you? Not being able to have children?" He nodded, his gaze fixed on the sidewalk ahead. "It's like losing something I never had. And then there's the irony, being so focused on building a future that I forgot to actually live in the present." Karen's voice was softer now. "Maybe it's not about what you've lost. Maybe it's about what you can still build." Her words hit him with unexpected force. Tyler stopped walking, his eyes locking onto hers. "You really believe that?" Karen shrugged, a faint smile tugging at her lips. "I have to. Otherwise, what's the point?" That evening, Tyler found himself back in his penthouse, the city sprawling out beneath him. But for the first time, the view felt hollow. He thought about Karen's words, her unwavering resilience, and the sound of those heartbeats filling the clinic room. She'd opened a door he hadn't realized was there, a possibility he hadn't dared to consider. It wasn't just admiration he felt for her. It was the realization that her world, with all its imperfections and struggles, felt more real than anything he'd ever known. A sudden thought struck him. Karen had faced judgment before, and with the media's scrutiny on him, she might face it again. Tyler leaned against the glass, his reflection merging with the city lights. If it came to that, would he be ready to stand by her, publicly? He didn't have the answer yet, but for the first time, he knew he wanted to find it. Victoria Montgomery hadn't intended to keep tabs on Tyler Griffin after their breakup, or so she told herself. But as she scrolled through her phone late one evening, her perfectly manicured nails tapping idly against the screen, she couldn't resist searching his name. She hated how easily he had moved on, or seemed to anyway. She was nothing, if not calculated. Sitting in her penthouse office, she scrolled through the mock-up headline on her tablet, her lips curling into a sharp smile. "Millionaire in love with a single black mom." The headline was bold, provocative, and most importantly, it had bite. She glanced at the public relations executive seated across from her, a man whose expensive suit and air of detachment reeked of curated professionalism. "This will do," she said coolly, tapping the screen. "Circulate it immediately. I want every outlet running with this by tomorrow morning." The executive hesitated for only a moment before nodding. "It's aggressive," he said cautiously, "but it will get attention. The fallout could be unpredictable." Victoria waved him off, her nails gleaming under the soft light. "That's the point. Tyler Griffin chose to humiliate me. Let's see how he likes being under the microscope." The first article hit the internet at dawn. By noon, Karen Morrison's quiet life had been turned upside down. At the Bright Futures Community Center, the atmosphere buzzed with tension. Reporters swarmed the gates, cameras flashing as they shouted invasive questions. Karen peered out the window, her hand clutching the edge of a desk. One journalist called out, his voice rising above the background noise. "Are you using Mr. Griffin to fund the center? Is this a PR stunt?" Inside, the children huddled close to their teachers, their curious gazes occasionally darting to the chaos outside. Karen drew the blinds, her movements slow and deliberate, as if shielding the children could somehow shield herself. Her phone buzzed relentlessly. Texts, emails, missed calls. Every notification felt like a weight, dragging her deeper into the storm. Tyler had reached out multiple times, but she hadn't answered. What could she even say? That evening, Karen sat alone in her modest apartment, her normally warm home feeling uncharacteristically cold. The headlines had reached her neighborhood. Neighbors avoided her, some offering pitying glances, others whispering behind her back. She stared at her phone, Tyler's name glowing on the screen. Her finger hovered over the answer button before pulling away. The doubts gnawed at her. Was she dragging him down? Did he deserve this chaos because of her? She moved to the window, her reflection faint against the city lights outside. The reporters had moved on, but their presence lingered like a shadow. Karen pressed her forehead against the cool glass, closing her eyes. Tyler Griffin was not one to overlook issues. Sitting in his office, he watched the headlines with growing fury. Every article, every thinly veiled insult against Karen, stoked a fire in him he hadn't felt in years. Karen's silence had worried him. He knew she was struggling, trying to protect herself in the only way she knew how, by retreating. But he wasn't about to let her fight this alone. His assistant knocked hesitantly on the door. "Mr. Griffin, the press conference is ready. Are you sure about this?" Tyler stood, adjusting the cuffs of his tailored suit. His voice was steady, unyielding. Positive. The press conference was held in the grand lobby of one of Tyler's flagship hotels. Cameras lined the back wall, their lenses focused intently on the podium. The room buzzed with speculation as reporters exchanged murmurs, their pens poised over notepads. Tyler approached the microphone, his presence commanding the room into silence. He scanned the crowd briefly before speaking. "I'm here today to address the recent headlines concerning my relationship with Karen Morrison," he began, his voice firm but calm. A murmur rippled through the crowd. "Karen Morrison is one of the most remarkable individuals I've ever met," Tyler continued, his tone unwavering. "She is not only a dedicated teacher and community leader, but also someone who has shown unparalleled courage and resilience in the face of adversity." He paused, letting his words sink in. "The insinuations that Karen is using me, or that our relationship is anything less than genuine, are baseless and offensive. They not only attack her character, but diminish the incredible work she's done for her community." The crowd shifted, pens scratching furiously. Tyler leaned forward slightly, his voice gaining an edge of intensity. "Karen didn't ask for this attention, she didn't seek it, but she deserves better than to be vilified for circumstances beyond her control. I will not tolerate the discrediting of her name." A reporter raised a hand. "Mr. Griffin, do you think this will hurt your reputation?" Tyler's eyes narrowed slightly. "If standing up for someone I care about damages my reputation, so be it. I'm not here to protect my image. I'm here to protect her." Karen watched the broadcast from her apartment, her hands trembling as she clutched the remote. Tyler's words washed over her, each one chiseling away at the doubts that had plagued her. By the time the press conference ended, she felt something she hadn't in days: hope. When Tyler called again that evening, she answered, "Thank you," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "You don't have to thank me," Tyler replied, his tone gentle but firm. "I'm not going anywhere, Karen. No matter what they say." Karen's grip on the phone tightened as tears pricked her eyes. Suddenly Karen clutched her abdomen, the sharp pain cutting through her like lightning. She leaned against the counter in the community center's break room, her breathing shallow as she willed herself to stay calm. The twins weren't due for weeks. She wasn't ready. Not here, not now. A second wave of pain buckled her knees, and Karen gasped, fumbling for her phone. Her trembling fingers managed to press Tyler Griffin's number. He answered almost immediately. "Karen?" Tyler's voice was steady, but laced with concern. "What's wrong?" "I think it's time," she whispered, panic creeping into her tone. "The babies, they're coming." Tyler reached the hospital in record time, his car skidding to a halt at the emergency entrance. He barely registered the rain soaking his suit as he bolted inside, his mind singularly focused. "Karen Morrison," he said breathlessly at the front desk. "She was just brought in. She's having twins." The nurse gestured toward the maternity ward. "Room 36. She's being prepped now." Tyler didn't wait for further instructions. He found her room, where a flurry of nurses surrounded Karen, who lay pale and sweating on the bed. Her eyes met his as he entered, and for a moment, the fear in her gaze softened. "You're here," she murmured weakly. "I'm here," he confirmed, stepping closer. He gently took her hand, his own shaking slightly. Hours passed in a haze of tension and activity. Tyler paced the waiting room, the sterile environment doing little to calm his frayed nerves. Every announcement over the intercom sent his heart racing. Finally, a nurse appeared, her expression warm. "Mr. Griffin, the babies are here. They're early but healthy." Relief flooded him, his knees nearly buckling as the tension drained from his body. "And Karen? She's stable. You can see her soon." The nursery was quiet, except for the occasional cooing of newborns. Tyler stood by the glass, staring at the two tiny bundles swaddled in pastel blankets. The nurse beside him smiled. "Lily and Rose," she said, pointing to their name tags. "Beautiful names for beautiful girls." Tyler nodded, swallowing hard. His vision blurred as he took in their delicate features, their tiny fists, the faint wisp of dark hair on their heads. For so long, he'd defined family as a legacy, a continuation of his name. But in that moment, watching the fragile lives he'd only just met, he realized how hollow that concept had been. When Tyler entered Karen's room, she was propped up on pillows, exhaustion etched into her face. But when she saw him, her smile was faint, but radiant. "They're perfect," she said softly. "They're strong," Tyler replied, sitting carefully in the chair beside her bed. "Just like their mum." Karen's laughter was weak, but genuine. "Don't start with the flattery. I'm too worn out to deflect it." Tyler grinned, his hand finding hers. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment before the nurse wheeled in the twins, each snug in their bassinet. "Would you like to hold them?" the nurse asked. Karen nodded, her arms trembling slightly as she took Lily, the smaller of the two. Tyler hesitated, his hands hovering over Rose's bassinet. "Go ahead," Karen encouraged, her voice soft. "She's yours too." Tyler swallowed hard, carefully lifting Rose into his arms. She was impossibly light, her tiny form warm against his chest. The rhythmic rise and fall of her breathing calmed something deep within him. Karen gently teased, "You've held boardrooms in your palm of your hand. But this has you completely undone." Tyler chuckled, his voice thick with emotion. "This is different. She's everything." Karen watched him, her own heart swelling as she took in the sight of Tyler cradling Rose with a tenderness she hadn't expected. In that moment, the weight of the past weeks, the headlines, the judgment, the fear, melted away. Later, as the twins slept in their bassinet, Karen and Tyler talked quietly in the dim room. "I wasn't sure about letting you into all of this," Karen admitted, her voice tentative. "It felt overwhelming." Tyler nodded, his gaze fixed on the twins. "I didn't know if I could handle it, but seeing them, being here, it feels like everything that matters is in this room." Karen reached for his hand, their fingers intertwining. "You've become part of this family, Tyler, whether you planned for it or not." He smiled at her, a rare vulnerability softening his features. "And I'm not going anywhere, no matter what comes next." Karen believed him. 1 month had passed since Lily and Rose entered the world, filling Karen and Tyler's lives with a sense of peace they hadn't thought possible. The chaos of reporters, scandalous headlines, and public scrutiny seemed like a distant memory, until Victoria Montgomery decided otherwise. The headline broke at dawn, splashed across every major news outlet. Victoria Montgomery reveals the truth: Tyler Griffin's infertility and his surrogate family. The article was venomous. Victoria's sharp words quoted verbatim. She painted herself as the victim of a failed relationship, claiming she had walked away out of heartbreak when she discovered Tyler couldn't have children. But the most damning accusation was against Karen. "She's not looking for love," Victoria had said, her tone dripping with faux sympathy. "She's looking for a provider, someone to raise children that aren't his. It's sad, really. Tyler deserves better." By mid-morning, the story was everywhere. News anchors dissected Victoria's claims with clinical precision, while social media exploded with opinions, judgment, and vitriol. Karen experienced the intensity of the storm at the Bright Futures Community Center, even before her arrival. As she attempted to maneuver through the chaos with Lily and Rose in their double stroller, reporters swarmed the entrance like vultures, shouting questions and flashing cameras. "Karen, is it true Tyler isn't the father? Did you trap him into this relationship? What about the rumors you're using his wealth to fund the center?" Karen pushed through them, her heart pounding as she shielded the babies with her body. The accusations weren't just cruel, they were humiliating. Her colleagues and the parents at the center looked on from inside, their faces a mix of sympathy and discomfort. She drew the blinds in her office and sat in the dark, staring blankly at her phone as it buzzed incessantly with messages. Tyler had called multiple times, but Karen couldn't bring herself to answer. She felt raw, exposed, and helpless against the tidal wave of public judgment. Tyler, meanwhile, was livid. Sitting in his corner office, his jaw clenched as he reread Victoria's statement. Every word was calculated to undermine everything he had built with Karen. But it wasn't just about him. It was about Karen, the twins, and their family. "She transgressed a boundary," he uttered, his tone soft, yet brimming with simmering anger. His assistant nodded nervously. "The PR team is drafting a response." "No," Tyler snapped, standing abruptly. "This isn't going to be some corporate statement. I'll handle this myself." Karen knew she couldn't avoid the press forever. The next morning, she stood at the center's podium, her hands trembling slightly as she adjusted the microphone. The reporters were already gathered, their cameras poised. She took a deep breath, steadying herself before she began. "I've been silent for too long," Karen said, her voice firm despite the butterflies in her stomach. "But I won't stay silent while lies are being spread about the people I love." The room hushed. Karen's gaze swept across the reporters, her tone gaining strength as she spoke. "Tyler Griffin is not defined by his ability to have biological children. He is a man who stepped into my life at a time when I needed strength, compassion, and support. He has given more to me and my twins than biology ever could." Her voice cracked slightly, but she pressed on. "Our family is not about appearances or headlines. It's about love, trust, and a shared commitment to each other. To suggest otherwise," her voice hardened, "is not only disrespectful to us, but to every family built on bonds that go beyond blood." The reporters scribbled furiously, the room electric with the weight of her words. Karen looked directly into the nearest camera, her gaze unwavering. "Tyler Griffin is a father to my children, not because he has to be, but because he chooses to be, and that is more than enough." Tyler watched the broadcast from his office, his heart pounding as Karen's words reverberated through the screen. She had stood up for him, for their family, in a way that left him humbled and awestruck. That evening, he arrived at Karen's apartment with flowers in hand, a rare vulnerability etched into his face. She opened the door, her expression a mix of exhaustion and relief. "Karen," he began, his voice thick with emotion, "you didn't have to do that." "Yes, I did," she replied firmly, "because it's the truth, and I won't let anyone take that from us." Tyler stepped closer, setting the flowers down before taking her hands in his. "You've done more for me than I ever thought possible. I won't let them tear us apart." Karen smiled faintly, tears glistening in her eyes. "We're stronger than they think, Tyler. They don't know us." He pulled her into a gentle embrace, the weight of the past weeks finally lifting as they stood together, united. The media storm slowly began to die down after Karen's statement. Public sentiment shifted, with many praising her bravery and authenticity. Tyler, true to his promise, worked tirelessly to ensure their family was protected from further attacks. As the twins slept peacefully in their cribs that night, Tyler stood by the window, watching the city lights twinkle. Karen joined him, slipping her hand into his. "We'll be okay," she said softly. He nodded, his gaze never leaving the horizon. "We will, and I'll make sure of it." For the first time in weeks, Tyler felt a deep sense of peace. They had endured the challenges together, and Tyler knew they would confront any future challenges as a family. The decision had been weighing on Tyler Griffin's mind for weeks, but it had never felt more certain than in the quiet stillness of his penthouse one evening. Lily and Rose were asleep, their soft breaths the only sound in the nursery. Karen sat nearby, her head tilted back against the armrest of the sofa, her exhaustion evident, but her presence grounding. Tyler glanced at her, his heart steady with resolve. He crossed the room and sat beside her, the weight of his decision clear in his posture. "Karen?" he began softly, careful not to wake the twins. She opened her eyes, immediately sensing the gravity in his tone. "What is it?" He hesitated for a moment, his hands clasped together. "I've been thinking about this for a while, about us, about Lily and Rose." Her brow furrowed slightly, her gaze unwavering. "Go on." "I want to adopt them," Tyler said finally, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "I want to make it official, to be their father in every way that matters." Karen blinked, her lips parting slightly in surprise. For a moment she didn't speak, her mind racing with questions and emotions. "Tyler," she started, her voice cautious. "Are you sure? I mean, truly sure? I don't want this to be something you feel obligated to do because of everything we've been through." "It's not obligation," he interrupted, his voice firm but gentle. "It's love, Karen. For you. For them. I already see them as mine. This is just about making it real." Her hands tightened on her lap, and she looked down, her emotions flickering across her face. But what about the headlines? The scrutiny? You've already dealt with so much because of me, because of us. Tyler reached out, taking her hands in his. I don't care about any of that, he said earnestly. Let them talk. Let them speculate. None of it changes how I feel about you or the girls. They're my family, Karen. And so are you. Karen's eyes filled with tears, her walls slowly crumbling under the weight of his sincerity. I don't want you to regret this. I won't, he said simply, his voice resolute. If anything, I'd regret not doing it. They've given me something I never thought I'd have. A sense of purpose, of belonging. I can't imagine my life without them. The adoption process moved faster than Karen had anticipated, thanks to Tyler's persistence and resources. On the day of the private ceremony, the small courtroom was filled with a warmth that contrasted the official setting. Karen held Lily, while Tyler cradled Rose, their tiny hands clutching at his lapel. The judge smiled gently as she reviewed the paperwork, her tone light as she addressed them. Mr. Griffin, are you ready to take on this responsibility, to love and care for these children as if they were your own? Tyler didn't hesitate. I already do, he said, his voice steady, though a hint of emotion seeped through. The judge nodded, turning to Karen. Ms. Morrison, do you consent to this adoption, entrusting Mr. Griffin with the role of their father? Karen's voice trembled slightly, but her conviction was clear. I do. The judge made her final announcement. It's official. Congratulations to your family. Karen exhaled deeply, a mixture of relief and joy washing over her. Tyler leaned closer, pressing a kiss to the top of her head as the twins squirmed in their arms. Later that evening, back in the penthouse, Karen and Tyler sat together on the living room floor, watching Lily and Rose kick their legs in excitement under the soft glow of a lamp. They're officially yours now, Karen said quietly, her voice filled with wonder. They've always been mine, Tyler replied, his gaze locked on the twins. This just makes it legal. Karen smiled, her heart swelling as she watched him interact with the girls. He was patient, tender, and entirely devoted, qualities she hadn't known she needed in her life until now. She leaned against his shoulder, her voice soft. I didn't think I could let anyone in after everything I've been through. But you've proven me wrong every step of the way. Tyler turned to her, his expression serious, yet filled with warmth. And you've shown me what family really means. It's not about blood or legacy. It's about showing up, about love. You've given me that, Karen, you and the girls. Karen blinked back tears, her voice catching. We're lucky to have you. Tyler smiled, kissing her forehead. No, I'm the lucky one. As they watched the twins drift off to sleep, Karen and Tyler sat in comfortable silence, their hands intertwined. Their journey had been anything but conventional, but in that moment, surrounded by the quiet hum of their home, they knew they had built something unshakable, a family. The soft glow of balloons and fairy lights illuminated the penthouse's expansive living room, now transformed into a vibrant celebration. Lily and Rose had entered the world a year ago, and their first birthday was a testament to their resilience, love, and the family they had formed despite all challenges. Karen Morrison adjusted the bow on Rose's tiny dress, while Tyler Griffin cradled Lily, who giggled at the string of balloons he dangled before her. The gentle hum of loved ones, including teachers from the community center, Tyler's close friends, and a few trusted colleagues, filled the room. Look at her, Karen said, smiling as she watched Rose's wide eyes follow the movement of a guest passing by with cake. I don't think I've ever seen her this fascinated. She's plotting her move, Tyler joked, leaning down to kiss Lily's forehead, and Lily's keeping notes. Karen laughed, shaking her head. They get that scheming from you. As the cake was brought out, a delicate confection decorated with pastel flowers and the twins' names, Tyler found himself stepping back for a moment, taking in the scene. The girls squealed with delight as the candles flickered, their tiny hands clapping in excitement as Karen helped them blow out the flames. Tyler's chest tightened, the noise of the party fading into the background. This was it. His legacy. It wasn't about skyscrapers, financial empires, or family names etched into marble. It was here, in the warmth of Karen's laughter and the unfiltered joy of Lily and Rose. Later, when the guests had gone and the twins were fast asleep in their nursery, Tyler walked into the living room, where Karen was tidying up. She wore a contented smile, her movements unhurried. "Leave it," he said softly, taking the empty plates from her hands. Karen turned, her brow arching in mock defiance. "And let you handle it." "I have other plans," Tyler said, a glimmer of mischief in his eyes. Before Karen could respond, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Her breath caught as he opened it to reveal a simple but elegant diamond ring. "Karen," Tyler began, his voice steady but filled with emotion, "this year has shown me what truly matters. It's not about the headlines or the legacy I once thought I needed. It's you. It's Lily and Rose. You've given my life meaning in ways I never thought possible." Karen's hand flew to her mouth, her eyes brimming with tears. "I want to spend the rest of my life with you," he continued, his voice soft but unwavering. "Not just as the twins' father, but as your partner. Will you marry me?" For a moment, Karen couldn't speak. Her thoughts swirled with everything they'd endured, the scrutiny, the doubts, the love that had grown stronger through it all. Finally, she lowered her hand, her tears spilling over as she nodded. "Yes," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Yes, Tyler." He slipped the ring onto her finger, a perfect fit, before pulling her into his arms. They stood there, wrapped in each other, the world outside fading into irrelevance. Later that night, Tyler and Karen stood by the twins' cribs, their hands intertwined. Lily stirred slightly, her tiny hand clutching the edge of her blanket, while Rose sighed softly in her sleep. "They're perfect," Tyler murmured, his voice filled with awe. "They're ours," Karen replied, leaning her head against his shoulder. Tyler gazed down at the girls, the weight of everything they'd built settling over him like a warm blanket. He thought about his past, his relentless pursuit of success, his fixation on legacy, and how little it mattered compared to this. "This is my legacy," he said quietly, his voice firm. Karen looked up at him, her eyes shining, and it's a beautiful one. The stars twinkled through the nursery window, casting a gentle glow over the room. Lily and Rose slept peacefully, their breaths rhythmic and steady. As Tyler and Karen stood together, the soft hum of the city below them, they knew their journey was far from over. But in that moment, surrounded by love and the family they had created, they felt ready for whatever came next, and the stars shone brighter, a quiet promise of hope and enduring love. If this film touches your heart, leave your mark with a like, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel to explore more meaningful stories with us. Share your feelings with us and tell us your own stories. Every word you share is a building block that helps create our strong and enduring community. Together, we'll create a warm space where everyone can share and connect. Finally, don't miss the incredible stories coming your way soon. We're always here to bring you the best selections, full of deep values, yet entertaining. See you there.